Hello, everybody. I think I see some new faces. So feel free to, we can have your cameras on or not. That's totally up to you. I'm on camera, obviously, but that's totally up to you. But we do participate. This is kind of the beauty of the group coaching is that you get to participate. So either just introduce yourself right in the chat or speak. It doesn't matter to me. And we do wait like a few minutes before I get started. Just lets everybody get here that wants to come. All right. Ah, from Minnesota. Love, love. I'm so excited that it might actually like get warm, stay warm in Minnesota right now. I can't even tell you. I am kind of over the weather at this point. Hi, Kathy. Yeah, I hear somebody's little pal. All right. Really? We've got new faces this time. I love it. I love that in April we're getting new people. That's awesome. Hey, long time no see. How are you?
Another month.
I know. I know. How are things going for you?
Oh my gosh, so good.
Good. Good.
What do they say? It takes 6 months sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 5 years. I don't know. No, I'm on the year plan because I did this as a side hustle. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it was November. I left my job November. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're hitting your stride now and feeling pretty good about it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's amazing because when you ask people, they all have different answers. And now that I know things and I hear other things, I'll be watching a YouTube or a course and I'll be, oh, they're wrong. I know that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah, there's a lot of promises that go around that I'm like, really, really, can't we just all be adults? I don't know. Be honest about it.
Yep. And I'm going
Nothing
with
changes
be helpful. Like try and be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a ton of why I decided, I mean, a year's worth of free coaching once a month is an enormous gift when you look at some of these coaching packages and how much they cost. But I just can't get my head around like, oh, just come for 6 weeks and then your life is going to be better. Like, no, that's not how any of this works. It's not how humans function. So I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it for a whole year. And, then people can come in and see what the materials are and dabble in that and get to talk to me in person. If you can come on the Thursdays at the first of the month, because man, if you want to see change in your life, you have to put in the effort and it takes time.
Mm-hmm. Happy 4 then.
Happy 4. We're 4.
Did you do a December one though? Maybe there was a bonus that I jumped on.
I did do a bonus December one. Oh, Kathy, you've just been following me the whole time. But yeah, I did do a bonus one in December, just kind of as like a master class to get everybody ready and in. But didn't start like my series that I was going to teach on until the January one. Yeah. All right. Well, like I said, those of you that are new, if you want to join in face on screen, you can. You don't have to. You certainly can join in conversation. I stop at different times during the presentation part of this, and let us just kind of discuss and, I don't know, digest the material that I'm putting out there. But you also can just take an opportunity to say hello in the chat. And ask questions in the chat, and I'll monitor that as well. so that I get to everybody's stuff. But the beauty of being here with me is that you can make this really applicable to your life specifically. So we're talking about self-care. As you'll hear me say today, everybody needs self-care. But if we talk about a topic that's like bumping up against something you're struggling with in your life, share a little bit with us, and then I can give you some direct coaching right here and now. These are recorded and then posted into the course room that only the people with access to the group coaching course room see. It's not something I put out just on Facebook or in public. So these are people that invested enough to put their little email into the system and have been using the materials, so it doesn't just stay out there in general. I don't want you to worry about that. Okay. All right, so let's get started. I am going to mute everybody just in case you do have like little pals in the background that chatter. That way, the only face that you see while I'm talking is me in the recording itself. All right, you guys, this week, craziness to me. I got strep throat. My daughter got strep throat. So all of my great planning, I have some really great stuff that I'm going to share my screen right now. But all of my really great planning for you guys this time, it isn't all up in the course room even yet. So forgive me. Most of it's up, but not everything is up yet. So we are going to do a present full screen. No? Yes? There! Awesome! So everybody can see this. Okay. Oh, except that I literally started at the end. That's so funny. I mean, it's been one of those weeks, so I apologize. So today we're talking about self-care. And in particular, I really want to talk about self-care in a new and different way than maybe you've heard other people talk about it before. I think that self-care in pop culture is a marketable thing, right? It's our capitalistic society wanted to get a little bit of money out of this idea. And so when we did that, though, we really made it a transactional kind of a thing. And the things that come to mind when we think self-care aren't always what a therapist, if you were seeing a therapist, would think of as self-care. So I'm going to talk today about what real self-care is. Real self-care, let's see, we'll go to the next screen. Oh, this is the introduction. Real self-care is the kinds of things that we have to do in order to want to stay in our lives, not escape from our lives, not get away from our stress, but actually stay in our lives. So we know midlife is hard. Like there's a lot of stuff that's changing all at the same time, which is really, really tough. And we might be reaching our limit at this point, or we've gone well past that limit. And what we're really experiencing in many ways, because some of us really had our crap together, like we ran a tight ship and did have a self-care regimen and it worked. What you may find is in midlife, the things you used to do no longer give you the oomph that they once did, right? And that's really where this subject comes up again and is so important. Now, if you've been in the group course and you've looked at some of the materials online, we started in January talking about self-awareness. And we talked about self-compassion or loving yourself in February, because it's February. And then in March, we were talking about how it's hard work. So I leave self-care and after all of that line. I know, does this make sense? Probably not right on the top, but I leave self-care until now, because if you really are trying to create sustainable change and design a life that you want to be in, get out of this midlife that just feels like a drag and you're feeling stuck and your needs aren't being met in the way that you want, then you're going to have to do the kind of self-care I'm talking about, where you really shift into this idea of feeding yourself like a vessel, like you are the one that does all the work and goes out into the world. And so if you want to be compassionately self-aware about old patterns of behavior, and change those by making self-empowered decisions, which is what we've talked about up until now, you're going to need the energy to do it. And that's what we're going to get into today. So, your self-care needs. Life is so dynamic, so changing all the time. There's nothing ever stays in one place, it feels like. And I think that's honestly the thinnest spot in midlife is we do kind of let ourselves think that everything is going to stay the same. We get into patterns and habits and we don't like them disrupted. Like if everything gets disrupted at the same time, it's terrible, right? Like I got sick this week, then my daughter got sick this week. That interfered with school and daycare and when I was going to see clients in my office versus when I was going to see my clients online. And you get into a pattern and it feels like, hey, if everything just stays like this, I can hold it together. But the truth of the matter is life doesn't operate that way. So if we create self-care around a concept that everything will stay status quo, we're going to run into trouble, right? So one of the pieces of our self-care is that it has to be dynamic and flexible and agile as we need to be. And it's a personal experience. So I literally just today was talking to a client and we were chatting about how for her, body-based self-care, exercise, diet, being out in nature, super, super important. But it had changed over time. Like she used to get up at 5:30 in the morning and go out and exercise every day because that was the time that she could do it before work. She was finding that she was a little bit low energetically, but she didn't want to let go of this whole self-care part of her life. So she had to find a new place for it. And what was happening is she wasn't changing the rest of her schedule later in the day, really. And all of a sudden, getting to exercise felt like a drag. And before, it had always been something that was really replenishing for her, really nourishing for her. It's not me. I'm just saying, like, I love walking, but I don't think of walking as exercise. But if I was going to hit the gym at 5:30, oh my gosh, no. And so it would never have thought, I never would have thought that was nourishing, but she did when it was there. And what was really driving the problem was she wasn't accommodating and being flexible in order to build it in. So it was a nourishing thing now later in her day, since she didn't want to start her day so early. So it's a personal experience. And one person's, checklist item that feels like a drag, lifting weights to me feels like a drag, is somebody else's most important thing. And if they don't do it, it can't, like they start to unravel, right? So I want you to really be thinking about the fact that it doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters how that impacts you. It matters that makes a difference in your life. And it matters what kind of you're talking about. So the versions of you in life change, probably need a little extra self-care. You probably do need to be looking at this and discerning, like, I might have to think about what's going to help me the most. And then third, you really always need to be thinking about the fact that everything is ebbing and flowing, right? And so normal versus stressed, you may find that something that is, you have to do it every single day. Like I do my meditation in the morning. I have to do that every single day. Under a stressed environment, doing it in the morning might actually cause me more stress. So there's some ebb and flow to our own life that might mean that our patterns need to ebb and flow just along with them. So that's our starting point. Now, there are two categories of self-care: boundaries that shore up the energy that we have and keep it precious, and nourishment, the things that we do that refill us, the things that we do that fill us up, right? And this is a constant balance between these two different categories. If you don't have boundaries, you would need so much nourishment that you would not have the time to do it, right? But if you have too firm of boundaries, then you can certainly, fill yourself back up, but you might not be experiencing the energetic flow that you want to. And unfortunately, that kind of dams up on you as well. So this is a constant balance of figuring out, where do I need boundaries on my time, on my, like with the people that I'm with, who gets to have access to my time, right? I'm not going to go, out to eat with somebody that's hypercritical of me when I don't have the bandwidth for it. That would be a bad idea. So that would be a boundary that you would want to set at that point. I also am not going to not go on something like that. So this is where this is like unique. What if it's your mother-in-law? Let's say you have to go because the cost of not showing up to this family Easter event would be worse on you. So you might have to give yourself some extra nourishment because you are going to break a boundary. Normally you wouldn't be doing these things, but you need to be doing them given a context, or given the fact that, on the other side of it, it might be worse for you if you haven't done that thing. So it's this constant dance between those boundaries and the nourishing activities. And again, the nourishing activities, it's a personal experience. Everybody's is going to look different. Everybody's got a different regimen of things, and you might need different things at different times. All right. So I want us to spend some time. I was hoping, for a little bit of discussion today, but I want us to spend some time. And these are the questions that you're going to see in the workbook. So certainly I'm going to have you, if you want to spend time journaling this month, have you be looking at these. But each of these really are pulling out something a little bit different that helps you figure out what your personal self-care needs are. So we start with what you really think your definition of self-care is. And if it is far removed from this idea that I have, where these are the things we do to bolster ourselves up and to be present and preserve the energy that we have, so we want to stay in our lives, stress included. We want to stay in our lives with that stress. It's okay because we're doing enough self-care. So that's really where we begin. And if your definition is far from that definition, that might be one of these places where I would suggest you try to close that gap a little bit. I'm not saying that you have to believe me that you can actually love your life, including the stress in your life, but you can. I'm not asking you to go all the way out on that side of things, but what could we be doing here that would close that gap? So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to stop sharing. And I just wanted to hear from you guys. What are you thinking? What would close that gap between doing self-care like it's a luxury, an extra replenishment after stressing yourself out, versus having it be such a staple that it's feeding the vessel that does all this stuff in your life?
I'm unmuted and a jet is going to go right over, right? I've always looked at self-care as really something that I am actively doing for my health benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not far off from where you are. And as far as the boundaries go in our family, it's pretty clear to everyone. And the Easter is the good example. The other mother-in-law has declared Easter her holiday, and all 5 boys and their wives and the kids show up. So there's so many events when you have 5 people, like there's a birthday or a Christmas or something. It's just the boundary that she set. And as the other, I've learned so much from her too in that realm with family. Nope, I'll stay a week, no more than that. You kids, you got to get up early and feed the babes now, because why
Exactly.
don't you just stay over? Nope, that's my boundary.
That's my boundary.
I mean, if it's
right?
urgent, I'll change it, but
Yeah, you have to participate in some way, but you don't have to do all of the things. Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to mute.
I'm gonna look at the chat too, just to be sure. Virginia Beach and Minnesota, so diverse. Just saying. All right, Rhonda, Sandy, anybody want to chime in? Any thoughts on what your definition is if it's way off from what I'm talking about?
I can speak to, I think I agree and identify with what you're saying. This is my first time on, so I'm just trying to take it all in and kind of organize my thoughts, like between professional or personal, like what am I really here for and looking to get out of this. So, but I would completely agree with the boundaries. My mother-in-law always have to have boundaries with her, and she's got such a tight wrap on my husband as her son, and I think she abuses that a bit. And so I have to remind him that, I think she's manipulating you. You should, check yourself. And I have to help him try to manage that. So together we're kind of a unified front, but it's still difficult because it's his mom and he loves her and he wants to help and he wants to please her and all of the things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, isn't that like just it's the age-old problem. I'm books have been written on this. I mean, really, it's so interesting how that mom not relinquishing the reins with wife thing shows up. I don't know why. It's just so historical.
Yeah. I know, and I have two sons in their 20s, and I keep thinking, okay, how do I not become that? I don't want to evolve into being that mother-in-law or that mother that is perceived that way. And
Yeah.
that's like my greatest fear, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you not have that happen?
What I had a podcast recently on well, it was sometime in March on relationships and the change from transactional to relational with adult children. That might interest you because I talk about that because it's tough, but that sometimes is the issue, is that people stay stuck in I'm doing the things for you and I'm telling you what to do, which is okay when they're 8, but when they're
Yeah.
28, you need to move it into a relational thing where you're their biggest fan, you're always on their side, and here is a resource, but not offering the help or telling them they have to do things in a certain way, which
Yeah.
can be hard when you watch your kids do and make, do things that you wouldn't, or make mistakes. But that's a part of the life's journey. And, again, you can be here for support and you can be here as the biggest fan, but it's not your job to do it or tell them how to do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So tough though, when you've been the parent that does that stuff day in, day out for the whole time. So like, it's so easy. I could let me shave off about 10 years of grief. Could I do that? Can I shave off about 10 years of grief? Please
Sign me up.
Thanks for sharing, Rhonda. I mean, yeah, new faces. So anytime new faces come, it's totally fine not to talk as well, but I make this very colloquial and give people some advice more on a specific level. So I call you out, but you don't have to come. Don't worry. It's not like the teacher will give you a bad. It's not happening. All right. And Sandy, any thoughts for you? And don't have to answer this, but.
Well, I would say I'm a person who is learning boundaries very late in life. And so I'm beginning to grasp the idea that boundaries are self-care. And my world, if you go back to the Easter scenario, has done a complete 360. So in the fact that when I was a young adult in my 20s, my parents were divorced, and I had grandparents and aunts and uncles, and holidays were a quick, stop and see everybody, maybe have a bite to eat, off to the next one, trying to fit everybody in so that none of our older family members felt bad, that their family didn't care, didn't stop. And so now I'm at an age where my parents are deceased, and my grandparents and elderly family members. And so I've had a chance to, just be grateful that I've been invited to a family member's home to celebrate the holidays. And I fully embrace that. And, but I've been dating somebody for a year and a half, and he's divorced and has adult children. And so where the 360 comes in, as we talked about Easter, I said, you're invited as my +1 to this family gathering, no obligation, but if you'd like to come, I'd like to know you, let you know you're welcome. So I said, yeah, I'll come, and then I heard back next day, well, I'm not really quite sure what my, daughter and her fiance are doing. And well, so I finally just said, hey, it's okay. You spend time with your daughter and her fiance and his family, because I will be fine with with my family, and with my family, I quite frankly didn't want to give up seeing them, even though I love his family and I would love to get to know them better and all of that. I just felt that I needed to be with my family. So it is, you have these things going on at the same time. I would say I've been in kind of had to learn how to do some self-care for a long time in my life, and trying to figure out ways to do it in a healthy way. And I guess that's kind of a little bit of an oxymoron in the fact that self-care should be healthy.
Does make sense. It does make sense, because I think if listen, this is why I stop it just to have discussion around definition.
Yeah.
Because there are toxic forms of self-care, like, over exercising and focusing on your nutrition, and it becomes this other thing you have to do, and a laundry list of things you have to do is not nourishing, and it's bleeding out energy. So it's not balancing boundaries, and it's not balancing what fills you back up. It's actually a drain. And yet, conventionally, you would think exercise and diet, huge form of self-care. So again, it's not the thing that you're doing, but how you're managing these things and how you're thinking about these things, which is why I stop here. So
awesome.
Yeah, and I appreciate, Sandy, you're sharing, like, late in life, learning boundaries, late in life, fine, good. That is, it's better to learn them than to have never learned them. And what you're describing is really a great example of, I can never remember her name, but there's a researcher that says the boundary really is when I can love myself and I can love you simultaneously. So I have to set enough limit, right, to say I'm going to go spend time with my family, but I offered this up to you, and you might feel kind of uncomfortable that I'm not going to go to your stuff, but I love you and I love me now simultaneously. If I go with you, I start to self-betray, and I don't love myself with that equanimity, and that's not going to work, right? So that's a good standard. And if I can think of her name, I'll say it, of course.
It sounds like Brene Brown.
It's not Brene Brown.
Okay.
But Brene Brown talks about her, so I'm sure you may have heard. Brene Brown may be who I heard it from, just to be honest. All right, so we'll go back to these questions, and I'll kind of go through the rest of them here. So, first start with that definition, try to close that gap. Then in your journaling, I want you just to be honest with yourself, kind of where you're at in your self-care and what you are doing right now. And, if you want to take that one step further, you can kind of look at, does that counterbalance well with all the responsibilities or things that I'm tied to? When I'm overwhelmed, what do I notice? What's happening in my life when I'm overwhelmed? Now, why this is an important thing to reflect on when you're thinking about, self-care, is the kinds of self-care things that you'll do to compensate when you're overwhelmed. Because what we're not going to do is control things so that we never get overwhelmed. That's an unrealistic expectation. And it's those kinds of things, this perfectionist attitude, like, I'll just hold it all together. I'll just control all things. And if I do that, then I won't have to have a self-care for when I get overwhelmed. I just want you to put your cards on the table and go, humans are humans. Things are going to happen. So what do I know about when I get overwhelmed? Because that will tell me where my deficits show up, and that will give me information for choosing the right kind of self-care, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then also the flip. When I'm feeling my very best, what do I know is happening? Because that's also information, right? If I'm feeling absolutely at my optimum, I must be doing something right. And I want to know what it is that I'm doing right. And I want to keep doing those things, or even emphasize those things or strengthen those things for myself. So those are two important questions when you do that reflection exercise. The next would be barriers. We always have barriers. I told you I had strep throat this week, so I just got to take a sip because I got a something in my throat. Barriers often get in the way of our doing best by ourselves. It's not that we don't know what we need to be doing. We just find there to be barriers, and not to beat a dead horse, but like with this Easter, scenario, one of the barriers can be our family rules. Like, you don't say no to grandma. You don't not go to this thing. And so we kind of create this false sense that the control over whether or not we go or not is outside us. It's the rule. And all of last month's stuff, the March stuff, was talking to this idea of, no, actually, I get to make my rules. I am empowered enough that I can decide if I want to follow that rule that way, or if I need to redefine it because it better serves me and the people that I serve. Again, going back to this concept that you might have to leave somebody in their discomfort, but you need to be able to love both of you at the same time. And you might leave somebody in their discomfort because it's better for you. And as the vessel that does all the things in the world, your job is to protect that vessel, not them, right? Not the people that are holding up these rules that may not serve you anymore. So looking at the barriers, and then if those barriers wouldn't stop you, what would you be doing? Because it's kind of interesting. Like, if you just thought, hey, if there were no family rules and there were no consequences to me not following the family rules, what would I do? That gives you a lot of information about, okay, well, I'd like to get close to that direction. How do I emulate that with my own self-care? I heard this self-care tip this week by, I think it was Mel Robbins on her podcast. She called it Snow Globe, and I loved it. But for her, it's, when you can't extricate yourself from a situation where you're going to have the yuck coming at you, think of the person creating or the situation creating the yuck as being in a snow globe. You can watch them shake that thing up and there is a mess happening over there, but the glass keeps it from affecting you. So you may show up at the family event not because they told you had to, but because that was your choice. You felt like, I could do this better if I go, but you don't have to take in any of the slack when you say, but I'm not staying overnight. And I'm not, I know that you want me to bring a dessert. I worked 60 hours this week. So guess what? It'll come from the grocery store. And I don't want to hear about it. Wasn't home baked, right? I'm not taking that stuff in. So if you think of everybody who's like getting all upset about these things as in a snow globe with their mess, they have to take care of their mess, but you're on the other side of the glass. You don't need to take care of that or settle that down for them. So those are the questions. Those are the reflections. Those will really help you to understand what your specific personal self-care plan should be. So now let's talk about the categories of self-care. And this is not exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination. This is not exhaustive, but these are ones that in my coaching groups and in my online courses that I delineate. So please feel free to add, because there's certainly other things that people think about. But I break it down into the body-based, the mind. So like making sure that you're taking care of your cognitive ability, not getting yourself so overwhelmed and stressed that you paralyze yourself. Always, working to get some learning in your life so that you're always creative and always making that brain work all the way into your late adult years, because we know that that actually prevents senility, or at least its impact on people. Like if you get Alzheimer's, it really facilitates having a longer, better, enjoyable life. If you're always building new neurons in your brain, because your brain will learn, I can keep doing this, I can keep doing this, instead of atrophying, which is really what happens when you have Alzheimer's, or there's plaques and atrophying actually. So there's the body based, there's the mind based, there's the spirit based. And I'm pretty broad in this sense. Really, what I want you to be thinking about, if you're thinking about things that are spirit based, self-care is tying things to a bigger purpose than just you. So I am big in self-care on coming back to this vessel and taking care of this vessel so it can do all the things it needs to do in the world. But whatever version of, and I want to make sure that I have a legacy here, that I leave this world in a better place, or that I want, to raise humanity in some way. Though these are the kinds of things that tie back to that. Connection. Obviously, self-care will have to have people involved, because we are wired to be in relationships with one another. So you can't think of self-care as just single experiences that you're going to do on your own. They also include things that we do to fill back up with our people, with our tribe. And this is an interesting one, because some of us are introverted and would think that most self-care will then come from these isolated experiences. And truth be told, you might lean on those ones a lot as somebody who's introverted, and be much more specific and intentional with the social stuff that you do, because it'll have to be people that are in that small group of people you're okay with. But you still need the connection. At the very least, you need the connection for things like asking for help when you need to have help, right? So part of this self-care, because again, you're investing in wanting to stay in your life, part of this self-care is, if I'm going to hit that point of overwhelm, I'm going to need some people. And if I never invested in creating a people or a tribe, then I feel really at a loss when I hit that overwhelm. I don't have people to call at 3 a.m. essentially. So part of the connection self-care is an investment. It's like putting that money in the high yield savings account. You could go get it, or you don't have to put it there, and you could go get it. It's not like you're going to get penalized like you would with your retirement fund. But if you're not putting stuff in there and crap hits the fan, this is a really big deficit area, actually, because when we're overwhelmed, what really is happening is that internally our resources have hit their limit, but our stress is far outweighing that. The only way to narrow that gap is to have somebody else put resources into it for you. You're not going to just wake up one day with enough resources to then need it. So if you've depleted what you can do in a situation internally, then you're going to need your people to come to your aid and to help you through that. If you're not facilitating those relationships on a regular, then there's all sorts of things that are going to be the barriers. It's not just always a barrier of not having people, but it might be a barrier that's more like, I don't want to be a burden on people. And if you're not facilitating your relationship all the time with these folks, then you do feel like you're a burden. But people that you're connected with all the time will make it crystal clear it's never a burden to them. When they choose to be with you, it's what they're choosing. They're grown-ass people deciding to come into your life and be your support in that moment. It's on them if they told you they could do it and they don't have it to do. It's not on you. It's not you're not burdening them. They would be burdening themselves if they made a choice to take something on that they couldn't. And so you're facilitating these relationships so that you can trust in the relationship that you can go and access when you need that help. You can go and access that help. So connection is a really big one. And then reflection. I like reflection because I think that it marries up so well with what we talked about in February, which is that self-love or self-compassion concept. You really need to invest in the relationship with you as well, right? It doesn't really make sense to keep throwing things at yourself, like, I'll just get a massage and I'll go hang out with the girls one night and I'll get some more sleep here, and have it be completely divorced from who you are as a person. So you really need to have this relationship with you so that you're invested in, what does Natalie need right now? Man, she had strep throat, her kid had strep throat, her work week was still the same demands. Easter is this weekend. It's a more stressful week than normal. What does Natalie really need? Like, I want to lift her up. I want to take care of her. And so, all the stuff that we do normally, yep, we got to keep doing that. But I have these couple ideas of some extra things. So for me, girls, one of those things is I have a friend coming over tonight that's bringing my daughter and I dinner so that we can all sit down and have a meal together. I'll get some connection, and somebody made a meal for me. So there's one little chore that I didn't have to do. And I knew after a week like I had this week that was going to be something that was super valuable for me. So these places of reflection are places where you're really getting to know yourself. You're really getting to have a relationship with yourself, and you will fiercely want to protect this energy in this vessel, right? You won't want it to be depleted. You'll be so excited about the version of you that is at her optimum that you won't want her to have anything insult that or injure that. You will want to be sure that everybody gets the best version of you once you really have a relationship with that best version of you. When your hypercritical mean girl shows up, it's usually because she's broken you down into parts and you're only looking at aspects of yourself. So she comes in and she's like, you're going to wear that. You're going outside in that? Like, you look fat. I don't like that. Your wrinkles are showing, whatever. So like, I always harp on hypercriticalness around body image because let's be real, all women have it. But that she's then made you a body. You're not a body. You're a whole person, right? You're a whole person. If you walked into a room and heard somebody saying that to somebody you loved, you're going to go out in that. Oh my God, I can't believe you're so fat. You might actually get yourself into some criminal behavior. You might want to slap out that person that you just saw. The whole context of that would look and feel very different, right? So one of the ways to outwit our inner mean girl is to have a relationship with the whole of us. And when she tries to parse you out like a part, you can kind of see the bully, and you can kind of see how that's not going to work. It's never going to motivate me to do anything to take care of my body differently and look different if all I get is a self-critical nag in the background. So I'm protecting all of Natalie. Yep, you look a little overweight today, doesn't really matter because we love all parts of you. All parts of you, right? That's really where the reflection kind of self-care comes in. I don't go really into the body-based ones just because body-based ones are pretty, obvious. But we certainly can talk a little bit more about that if you want to. Let's see. Okay, what is my time? I got to watch my time. Okay, we got 1:45. All right. So what we're trying to do here in your self-care plan is to create that life balance. So, if we go back to the beginning, this balance, first of all, no, this one, sorry. I was all excited about the presentation, but I'm not really, it's a little clunky. So it starts here though, that your life is dynamic. it's a personal experience, and that personal experience will ebb and flow and can change. And that what you do when you're feeling great and normal and everything's copacetic is very different than maybe the additives that you're going to need when you're stressed, right? So it starts there. And then it has to break down into these two categories of, you're going to have to boundary up so that you can preserve the energy in that you need to keep. And when you choose to expend your energy, because we all do, we need to go out and do the things in our life. So we choose to expend that energy. What am I doing to re-nourish myself? So that's really what we're looking for in this flow, right? So while my pretty little graphic here shows equal parts of all of them, no, that's not actually what I mean. I mean, you need to be looking at all of these at all times, but it's more like a lava lamp. You know, sometimes you need a lot of something, it's a big bubble of something, and sometimes you just need a little of something. So it's just ebbing and flowing and bubbling and going and recycling. That's more how this works out. But you need to be looking at, what is my plan to create that kind of life balance? So that's where I'll stop for now, so we can share a little bit again. Oops, I lost the screen. It'll come back, don't worry. All right.
So this section really, I really identified with this. I was laid off in February from a job that I was at for almost 21 years. And I've been working from home since COVID. And so it was just a virtual meeting with my manager, and HR happened to be there. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to go well. But, they're like, go ahead, log off and take the rest of the day off. I had planned some PTO for a long weekend. And they chose to tell me instead of calling me while I was on my PTO. So I guess that was good. But where the cycle here of self-care happens is, that's a really, I don't know, this has never happened to me before. So it was very shocking. It's hard not to, blame yourself and feel like you did something wrong. But it was just a business decision, to them. And
Yep.
so I think I hit on almost every one of the self-care buckets or whatever you
Yep.
call them. I had my weekend planned, and it happened to be a scrapbooking weekend with several other women who are friends and supportive, good listeners. It helped me process the initial impact so well. I thought, oh, I'm not going to be productive. I won't be creative because of this. And I just was going to kind of like, but I actually was, because I was just surrounded with so much greatness. And it was a great distraction. I couldn't do anything right away anyways. So this was like perfect. and and then I decided very early on that I am gonna, have a routine to get up and, meditate, do some Bible study every morning with my coffee. Then I'm gonna log in on my laptop and I'm gonna start networking and applying for work and, working on things, and put in a full day. And then I still will take myself away from everything on the weekends. I still give myself a weekend. And just, really tried to make sure that I was like, don't panic. It's not like you'll never have another job, right? I mean, that's ridiculous to
Right.
think that. And so it was just like, okay, don't panic, just check yourself. You can do this just day by day.
Yep.
But it was, really a test of boundaries and nourishment, really, because
Yeah.
you think you can't do it quick enough, you can't get enough applications out, you can't make it happen quick enough, and what about this and what about that, and you know, just on top of all your regular stuff that you deal with every day.
Yeah.
And so it's I mean, I'm still searching. It hasn't happened yet, but I've been able to manage that self-care and feel good about
Mhm.
myself, even in a really frustrating um, position, you know, and
Yeah.
just trying to take care of myself, and that allows me to be able to apply and network and be available for what's next, right?
Right. Right. You know, it's such a beautiful example, Rhonda, of what you're doing neurobiologically. So I'm going to get science nerd on you just for a second. What you're doing neurobiologically is you're keeping your brain and nervous system from going into fight or flight, that survival mode. You said, you know, like, I can't panic, like, I'm never going to get a job ever again.
Mhm.
That's not realistic to think that. But, you know, by doing the self-care, you're keeping yourself in the space that you have access to this frontal lobe, and it can be reasonable and say, yep, we're going to do all the things we can do. We'll keep looking, we'll keep putting out resumes, we'll keep networking. And then you're responding and actually getting traction and taking care of the vessel, so that once that job shows up, you're all ready for it, instead
Mhm.
of being in this frenetic energy, just spewing all over the place, because you're so panicked and trying to do it. It's a really
Right.
beautiful example of that kind of balance. Mm-hmm. No, you're on mute, Kathy. I don't know why.
Am I off now?
Now you're
All right, now thank you for sharing, because I don't know, Natalie, if you remember, I think it was last month was a very similar new person that had come on board. And that was me last December. Like, and it's just good to share and let it out and listen and know that, I think I said at the beginning, 6 months, and here I am. I'm over that. I didn't go into the panic mode. I continued my routines. I kept my connections. I just kept going, because after
yeah.
16 years, I never thought it was going to happen to me, and it did.
Yeah.
But thanks.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Sandy? Any thoughts, reflections on the buckets? I loved your buckets metaphor. I'm going to have to keep that one. Thanks, Rhonda.
I guess I've certainly been there where Kathy and Rhonda were, and it's and I will say that what helped me the most was the day that I got laid off, or at least the week that I got laid off. I had a relationship with someone who invited me to come over, and he just held me, and we ate pizza and we watched a movie, and it was
Oh,
just heaven sent. I mean, and this was a guy that we didn't even have that strong of a relationship with, but that feeling of touch is so awesome. I mean, it
mhm.
really is for at least for me, it's sort of my love language, and I find that that makes me see the world like a whole lot brighter.
Mhm.
So and I did exactly that little wheel of meditate a lot, and go for walks and be with pets, and uh, I I lost a lot of weight that I needed to lose, and I was really probably the most joyful that I've ever been, not by the loss of my job, but because of a relationship that I was in.
Yeah.
But so I keep thinking, okay, I felt that joy once. How do I get that joy back now? Um, because I think my life really should be pretty ideal, but it's
Mhm.
missing the joy that I had felt at the time when I was deeply in love with somebody. And I, as I said, losing the weight, and I've been struggling again to not gain it back.
Which is so tough to do in this age range. It's so tough to do. Hormones are real, girls. They are real. I was just gonna say, oh well, now it's not presenting. I'm not sure what happened there. Go back. There we go. I was gonna say, Sandy, one thing to be thinking about how do I get back to that joy is these four here. Like, go back and really reflect on these in the workbook this month, and remember it's a personal experience. So what did it then might not do it now. But if you're asking yourself kind of in the now version of Sandy, what's overwhelming, and when I feel best, what do I notice there? What am I thinking are the barriers to my finding my joy? And if they weren't there, what would it look like? That might actually help you get down to something that at least feels like a SMART goal, where it's specific and measurable and all of those things. Like, you might have like a vision. And I know that when we say things to ourselves, like, I want to have joy in my life, that's an abstract concept. Your brain doesn't work towards abstract. It works towards a concrete, you gave it a picture in your mind. So it would have to look like, I'm doing this thing and I'm feeling this way and I'm, all of this, so that your brain would at least have a target to go towards. Just a suggestion. So there you go. All right. Well, anything else? Any other questions or any other thoughts that came up during the presentation itself? Okay. I just want to let you know that I had this offer going. Oh, I should have just left that up. Silly girl. Silly girl. All right. I had this offer up. If you don't listen to my podcast, you wouldn't have caught it. But I have this offer going right now where you can have a free 30-minute one-on-one coaching session with me. And it's very structured. I'm going to give you some questionnaires to complete, and they help guide us to look at where your strengths are and your weaknesses are, as far as, jumping into your joy and designing that life that you really want. In my podcast, we were talking about midlife mastery. So we're trying to get out of the grips of what might be midlife crisis. And so we'll look at those, like what the results of that was, and have a conversation. And then I'll be able to develop an individualized plan for you. And the one that I did this morning, like, she was really surprised with the self-care things that I had recommended, because she never had thought of those things as self-care for her. So she's an introverted person, and it ended up being that we were talking about creating some more self-compassion, loving kindness through her making herself experience getting loving kindness in some of her relationships. And she's very closed off to that right now, and more closed off when she's feeling not her best. So it was really surprising to her that that would be what I'd suggest. And I'm like, well, I'm guessing you're a smart girl. Like, you've probably been throwing some stuff at this. Massage is the next, like giving yourself extra time off work and all the things. Has it worked yet? And she's like, nope, it hasn't. And I'm like, well, try this and see what happens. Cause I'm telling you, like, based on what I'm seeing in the way that you answered these questions, you're struggling not to let that self-critical thinking override. And then you pull back, you double down in your old stuck behaviors that you think make you feel safe, but really it's just that they're familiar, right? We go back to what we know and we double down on it. And that will take you to an old place that you've already been to. That's your old map. It's not going to get you anywhere. So if you want to go to a new place, and you're going to have to develop that new map, then you also are going to have to start with some self-care that looks a little bit different and makes you a little uncomfortable. So if you want to do that, in the workbook this week, stop sharing. Oh, I know what I got to do. One more thing. Just one more thing. I'm not as good as I'd like to pretend that I am, but I'm better than most. I'm just not as exactly as good at this as I would like to be. So in the group coaching workbook this month, you'll see all the same stuff that you saw on my slides, but one it's not the very last page. Oh yeah, right before the copyright page. So it's right at the end. You just go there on the PDF and it will link you straight into that, signing up for that. So you can go right there, sign up. I really recommend that you do. I'm having a lot of fun doing them. And helping people kind of see a bigger picture for their life and take a different look at it that you haven't before. And as always, I mean, I'm a therapist first. And so if there's any of those places that I think kind of bleed into, you could really use some therapy to sit down with somebody and talk to somebody, then I'll let you know that that's those things. But the coaching things are more, on that individualized plan that you and I will come up with. The workbook, Rhonda, good question. So also, if you go to the coaching community courses, I'll walk you through this. Actually, I could probably send you, I did like a little tutorial the first time that we did it. Oh, oops, sorry. You go to group coaching. This group is called Story Lovers. We're the first one. And so you view that section. Come on. Did I do it? Oh, there we go. There's my internet. And the workbook is right there. So you click on that and it'll take you right down to where you can download that workbook for yourself. The only things that I don't have up yet, other than this video, because I have the personal development tools in the workbook. Oh, I know what it is. I have the video, but the video you see here is the one we did last month. I had some operator error in getting it uploaded. So this should change in the next day or so. And then you'll have the video for this month on self-care. That was it. I almost got it all done. I was sliding in, scooting in at the very end there. And I was like, I think I got it all. And then that stupid thing would not upload. YouTube and we go rounds sometimes. People are like, just go to Vimeo. Vimeo is so much better. And I'm like, I have 100 videos. So, and I don't have time to port 100 videos or money to pay somebody to port 100 videos. So I'll just go rounds with YouTube from time to time. That's just going to be how it is. All right. Well, thank you and welcome. Rhonda, it was really lovely to have you here. Hopefully we get to see your face. And if you ever can't come to these, that's totally fine too. You'll find the videos in that same course room. All right. Have a good rest of your evening and a happy Easter, everybody.